Welcome. This is going to be one of my first longer videos, so I am really excited that you're here with me today. We are going to talk about the time that it takes in order to see results and how long does it take when iron starts moving. This is, I'd say, one of the most popular questions that I get asked, and it's really not a simple answer. So there's a few kind of points that I want to highlight on, and I think it's probably best if we start off with just discussing where everybody is starting from. I think a lot of the time when we're asking that question, we're thinking, well, for me as Samantha, I might take a longer time to get where I want to go because, my body is different than, say, Susie. And that's the reason for it. But what if the reason is because it's like we're all starting on a staircase? And say our end goal is the top of that staircase. That's where we want to get to. Our minerals in our body are all either balanced or imbalanced, however you want to look at it, is where we're starting from. And so that level, and I prefer to look at it as our level of balance, is going to have us starting on a different staircase. So, for example, most of us are going to think, well, because my body is different, I'm unique. And while that's true, you might be having gallbladder, you might be having liver issues that are more severe than somebody else. That means that you're going to be starting near the bottom of the staircase. Our bodies all operate the same way in the sense that if we have a fever, that fever is a 5% increase. It's not Susie's body that's different from my body to determine whether or not that's a fever or not. That's just a broad stroke across the spectrum. Our bodies are not designed to operate at that level of stress. And if we had a fever for a prolonged period of time, then the body is going to be burning through minerals really fast because it's trying to get that fever down. It's going to be using copper in order to get that to happen. And so think of it the same thing when we're thinking of our overall wellness. Yes, we want to get to the top of that staircase, but I think it's important to put things into perspective for how long exactly that takes. That doesn't mean that you can't see results. That doesn't mean that you can't see improvements in things. But I think we need to really rethink how we're looking at our health and wellness overall. So I think a good example would be is if we are taking a supplement to stop, or a supplement or a pill, whatever have you, to stop a symptom, is our goal to stop that symptom because our body is healing and that symptom is no longer happening, meaning our body doesn't have to communicate with us that way, that is happening anymore? Or are we just trying to mute our body from communicating to us through that way? They're two completely different trains of thoughts. If somebody, say, is having heart issues and they are looking to have an improvement, one of the first recommendations should be looking at donating blood, because there was a study that was over multiple decades where men and women were looked at. And the women who were ovulating were 15 times, I believe, maybe 16 times less likely than men to have a heart condition. As soon as those women had a hysterectomy or went through menopause, they had the same likelihood of condition as men. So what is that telling us? That means that iron is regulated through blood loss is one of the methods that it happens. And so it's really important if we are not it's kind of like an oil change. We're pulling that iron out. And if you're new here and wondering whether or not, you have enough iron, you need to go back and watch some of my videos. I'm going to do some longer videos that explain how iron moves and get a little bit more in depth to it. But I think that's a really important part, is think of the symptoms that you're having and are you trying to mute it or are you trying to heal your body? Because as we heal the body, there's going to be different things that pop up. And so when I'm working with clients, the goal is to never make the symptoms go away. The goal is to heal the body and make it so that when those symptoms do appear, my clients understand what their body is communicating with them. Those are completely different trains of thoughts. And I'll give you an example. So when in the postpartum period, after I'd given birth with my first and my second, I would get this rash on my chest. And I chalked it up to hormonal imbalances because it's easy, it's dismissive, it's easy to just say, well, my hormones are imbalanced. And yeah, they're going to be changing because I've just had a huge amount of copper that baby has taken from me. So yeah. But that's something that comes through. This third baby that I just had, I didn't have any rash, none of that. But I started noticing different symptoms that my body was communicating with me that, hey, I needed to get some blood out and I needed to get it out fast. For example, hemorrhoids are a really common issue. If iron is regulated through blood loss, then we need to question why is the body, especially when they bleed, why is the body trying to remove blood? Why is it it's a weak point, it's a stress point. If we're sitting on it too much, emotionally, there's a connection there. But we need to ask ourselves, why is the body trying to use that as a way to remove blood? That should be a thought when we have frequent nosebleeds, especially children. If their bodies are smart. It's not like we need to stop that from happening. We need to understand that iron is regulated through blood loss. I cannot stress that enough. And we can support the body to heal so that we can regulate iron internally so that it's not focused so much on that avenue. So, for example, with myself, I took that as a sign, hey, it's time to get a blood donation in. Time to lose some blood. Really, really important. And now, after donating blood, I would say like 2 weeks later, I now have, which didn't happen at all after I gave birth, this rash that's appeared on my chest. Really itchy. Your skin is your largest external organ. And so your liver is one of the first places that iron accumulates in your body. So what that means is it also accumulates in the bile ducts. So I say that because that is significant. If you do not have a gallbladder or you are struggling with your gallbladder and your liver, it's likely because there is iron that's accumulated there. That's one of the first places iron goes is to the liver, but it primarily can go into the bile ducts. And that is a huge issue because we excrete iron through bile in feces. So if we have it so that our liver is getting more run down, more burdened, then that's a problem. And I was thinking of myself to try and put it into perspective for kind of how long this expects to happen. My sister was asking me, she's been donating blood. She obviously following my advice, and she's wanting to optimize her wellness too. She's recently had a baby, and so she was asking me, what do I think for how long it will take if people focus on moving iron for, how long that could take for them to reach optimal health, whether or not I think that, we will be able to reach it in our lifetime. And I think this sounds depressing, but I don't know if somebody like myself will reach it in my lifetime. I'm not sure. I think that our children have a chance to do that for sure. But there is just simply a huge lack of nutrients in our soil, primarily copper. I'm undecided about choline at the moment because if it's not in the soil, then I don't know how it's getting in us. And I have yet to find some kind of study that tells me about the amount that's in the soil. So I'm interested there. If you have any information on that, please let me know. But, which also makes me wonder, because there's lots of studies that say women are deficient in choline while they're pregnant. Well, are we deficient in it? Is it something that's not in the soil? Or is it because we have so much iron that's accumulated in our bodies that in order to make bile salts, we need choline, and there's such a huge demand on our body with no menstrual cycle, and we're not donating blood while we're pregnant, that it puts extra pressure on it, and not only that, baby's going to take what they need because it's going to support their brain development. I think it's a combination of the both, but I don't think it's just simply that we are just not getting enough. I think a large part of it has to do with the amount of iron that we've consumed and the lack of copper. So she was asking me, how long? And I said, well, I want to put it in perspective because we're all on this health journey. We all know where we want to go. But it's important to keep in mind that there is something to be enjoyed about getting there. It's the process of getting to where we want to go that I think a lot of us can forget can actually be enjoyable. And I know that sounds crazy, especially if you're watching this and you're having heavy periods and you're like, Sam, there's nothing enjoyable about my cramping. Or maybe you're having PMS and you're having really bad mood swings and you feel like you can't control things. That is, absolutely, I completely understand. I've experienced both of those to the point where I was put on birth control because of how much I would bleed. I was constantly in the ER. I was fainting with my menstrual cycle. I'd be put out for a week. It was extreme, and I was on birth control for 15 years. So putting that into perspective, iron being regulated through blood loss, you're going to be sick of me saying that, but I cannot emphasize that enough. That's one of the reasons we do not want to stop our menstrual cycle. If you think of that, and even if I really didn't have any kind of artificial flow for 15 years, but even if I did have a flow while I'm on a birth control, that's a synthetic flow. That's not an actual flow. So for 15 years, not having a menstrual cycle. And it works out to about roughly 1 blood donation a year when we have our menstrual flow. So that means that that's equivalent to about 400 to 500 milliliters per year of blood that I didn't lose. So that means that as we age, we accumulate iron, so that accelerates the aging process. Something to keep in mind, that if I were to try and donate blood to then compensate for the lack of menstrual cycles, donating blood can be helpful to help remove the iron. But in order to make up for that time, because you can only donate blood every so often, so say every 90 days I go and donate blood, it's going to take me around 5 to 6 years in order to make up for those 15 years that I missed. That is substantial. Now, when I was pregnant with my second son, I was low in iron, and with that, I began taking iron supplements at the last month of the pregnancy. And I went and looked back because I was curious to how much iron I was actually taking. I'd been putting off doing that because it makes me feel bad, as if you're watching any of my other videos, to see how much iron we actually have in our bodies and how we don't need to consume more because it's in our tissues, it's just not in the blood. But that was before I learned all this. And I took it for low ferritin, which is just a complete abomination of how iron moves in the body. But anyways, I was taking about 36 milligrams per day of iron. And so in 1 month's time, that worked out to about 1,080 milligrams of iron. So in order for me to, get back to balance, that means that in 1 month's time, I had consumed, because it works out to 25 milligrams of iron that we need a day. And our body recycles 24. So when I'm talking about how iron is moving, I'm talking about the physiological process that our body recycles iron at. So when we think that we just need to gobble down more, and that's the solution, we only need to consume 1 milligram per day. And our body does that through, when we give it whole foods, it's going to be able to absorb the amount that we need. The issue being is that when we force it into the body, then, and iron is what, ages us, then that's where we can run into issues, because it's not physiological. It's not what the body actually needs. And if it was, anemia would not exist, because our foods have been fortified with iron since 1941 in Canada, the UK, and the US. So if that was the case, where anemia was solved with iron, then no one would be anemic. They would tell us to go and eat more bread. And that's simply not the case. Anyways, so on top of the iron supplements, that would mean that I would need about 3 years that I had accumulated about 3 years worth of iron over that period, a little over 3 years. In order for me to get that out, that's going to take a year's worth of blood donations. So I'm sitting around, every 90 days being really consistent with blood donations. That means that I'm sitting around doing that for about 7 years. And that's, not including prenatals. That's not including, for example, there's lots of different things that can be detrimental for us absorbing iron, one of them being seed oils. That was something that was really common in my household growing up. So when we're thinking about this, I think it's important to go back and think of, well, where exactly am I starting from? Where is kind of the amount of iron that I've accumulated? I'm going to have a natural amount that I've accumulated over my lifetime. But then there's also these other things that I've subjected my body to, and that's really important. If you think of all of the different places that you drive by, or women talking about doing blood or iron infusions, it's difficult to pull iron out. There's no clinic I've ever seen that is withdrawing iron from your tissues. It's blood loss primarily, and then we can support the movement of iron through making sure that our gallbladder and our liver and our spleen are all functioning optimally, because the second route is through bile. And that's going to have a lot of pressure on it if we aren't trying to move iron overall. So, going back to that, that's me personally. That's a lot of, that's a long time. And I think that that's important to point out, because if I were just so focused on, I want to be able to get to this point and that's all that I care about, well, I'm going to miss the experience. I'm going to miss what I learn along the way. When I get to where I want to go, I need to have a better understanding of how to support my body. I need to understand what, my dog's going to start barking because somebody's about to come onto the door. I need to understand how to support my body. So just because we want to get to, the ultimate optimal health, it doesn't mean that when we get there, we're going to know how to maintain it. And that's part of why we need to learn along the way, so that we understand what's important, we understand how to maintain it. And I mean, at the end of the day, when we are looking to make, say, new habits, we're looking to make a change, part of that is to challenge us and see exactly how important is it for us. I will frequently get messages from people who follow me on social media, and they're like, I've been doing what you said on social media, but it's not working. Well, okay. I haven't sat down with you. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're not doing. I don't know what you're consuming. It's really hard for me, and if you're thinking of replying to the comments, I'll do my best to help point you in the right direction. My ebooks are the best way to go. But it's really difficult for me to say, because it's part of us having a discussion so that, one, I can help support you and tell you some ways that iron can be impacted, because there might be things that you're doing that you have no idea that impact iron, but they do. For example, seed oils. It could be blue light exposure. It could be a really common one, actually, is smartwatches and different smart devices that we put on our body can impact iron. Things like that. Vitamin D supplements, different forms of supplements can impact iron's movement. There's a whole different kettle of fish. And that's really important for us to keep in mind, because it's not to set you back, it's to help you understand what's important. And this was kind of like my aha moment, if you will, because we've moved recently, we've had a huge amount of big changes in my life and happen as a family, and things were really, really stressful. It felt like we were just living in stress for the majority of 2025. And having come out on the other side of that, my regime was not consistent. I was not consistent with my supplements. It was really difficult. But I'm really grateful for that experience, because it helped me understand how to get back on track. It helped me understand what exactly it is, like what's important to me. I mean, at the end of the day, what is important? And if I'm not going to take the steps that I need to get my health to where it needs to be, just because of stress, then that's ridiculous, like that's just like giving up in my mind. And so when we think of what impacts us and the reasons why it can take us longer, it can be stress and it can be complacency, because we can find out that, hey, all of these different things that we're doing are working, and then we try and we stop them, and then all of a sudden we have a huge setback. Well, we got complacent. We thought that we had, gotten to the point where we need to. And part of the issue is that our soil is depleted in the nutrients that we need. And I never really understood that. I would hear that time and time again, but that really didn't that didn't, I guess the better way of saying it, like, that didn't make sense to me, because I'm eating food, so there has to be nutrients in it. But that's not the case. Because if our soil doesn't have nutrients in it, then the nutrients aren't getting in the food, and then they're not getting in us. So we have this issue where we are eating constantly. We have access to all of this food, which is a huge issue when we're talking about how iron's moving and our body's ability to recycle iron when we are constantly eating, especially if it's some fake foods. Big issue there. We really need to be having fasting periods throughout the day where our body is having a break, and it can heal and it can rest, and it can go around and gobble up different cells that it doesn't need to have online anymore. That's really important. But in order to get the routine going again, when I was getting back into the things that are important to me, my goal was not to overnight get to where I want to go. That's impossible. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. And that's part of the mindset that I think can make things more frustrating, because you think, well, I have this rash, I have these, I have a pain, I have body aches, I have these different things going on. I really want them to go away. Well, our goal should be to become 1% better every single day. And that doesn't mean that we are going to reach where we want overnight. But if we can continuously make strides that are just a little bit, if, for example, today you're like, I'm going to take my adrenal cocktail, that is my goal for the day. I have these other supplements that I'd like to take, but I want to be consistent with my adrenal cocktail. I put my other supplements out so that I take them, but my goal is never, well, I'm going to take all of these supplements, because that feels overwhelming. My goal is I'm going to be consistent with one of them. I'm going to do that until I feel that I have accomplished that, and then I'm going to continue to do that and make my focus something else as well. And I think when we go about it that way, rather than thinking of all of these big changes that we have to make at once, it's really small changes that we make over a period of time that can be really helpful. And if you are focused on making 1% better every single day, then you're not going to fail. 1% better is so easy to accomplish. And if you're struggling with, say, being consistent or motivation or all of these different things that we can use as excuses to get in our own way, then just making a change, doing one thing, doing one action, and that's really important. So when we think of how long is this going to take, I can't tell you, especially without having had a conversation with you. Typically I can give you a general idea when I'm talking to my clients for, different symptoms that you're having, for how long I typically think the body is going to need to heal. Especially when I'm looking at blood work, there's some clients where I'm like, ooh, you're probably going to have to go through a phase where your body is detoxing, and it's not going to feel that great for a period of time. Part of it too is, I think a lot of people, they're like, I feel really tired when I'm taking this. Well, yeah, your body's been on overdrive for a really long time. Of course you're going to feel tired. Your body needs time to rest. That's what it's trying to communicate with you. Just because you're taking this doesn't mean that instantly your energy levels are going to go up. You're not going to have this fatigue anymore. It can go both ways. And I think a lot of the time when we're thinking of health, we're thinking of things really linear. If this happens, then this has to happen. And then if that's the case, then the opposite must be the reverse. And that's not how things happen. Some people can have been forced their spleen and their organs and, forcing them to work 6 times as fast, which doesn't seem like a big deal. But if you try and think of the last place that you drove to and it took 3 hours, and then you try and do that drive again in 30 minutes, you would not be able to do it safely. And neither can your organs when we're forcing them to work harder by giving them more iron. It's a heavy metal, and it's going to force the body to work harder. So that's an important distinction to make, because sometimes we need rest. Rest is really important, and our body is going to remind us of that. So again, how long is it going to take? I can't tell you. If you're having really heavy periods, depends if you're starting with, say, the beef liver or the cod liver oil or the adrenal cocktail. If you're interested in looking at which supplements those are, highly recommend downloading my free ebook on those supplements. I imagine as this ages, there's going to be different supplements maybe that phase out over time that I like to consume. I really like. I'm really selective over the supplements that I like, and so that free ebook is really important. I'm trying to think of how it works. I'm pretty sure you can go to my link. I'm unfamiliar with YouTube, so given that this is my first long video, I guess that would be the case. But I feel like you can go to my links in my bio and get it there. I'm pretty sure I can put it below, so I'll do that. That will take you to my website, and you can download all the free ebooks your heart desires. But if you're thinking of fatigue, eh, things all come back to copper. They all come back to that. And so if you're looking to have success over time, allowing the body to detox is really important. And that's what bloodletting is. That's what, removing iron through blood loss, and you're excreting something from your body, and we're helping the body get going. I'll do another video on why bloodletting is so important. But I think that when we're thinking of overall how long does it take, we need to change our mindset a little bit and understand that we are healing. Healing takes time. If you had a broken bone, you would give yourself at least 6 weeks for that spot to heal, and then you would be looking at doing different things on top of that. Kind of think of this as the same, where we're really wanting to heal our organs and our tissues that have been storing too much iron for a period of time. And in order to do that, we have to support the body to detoxify. I think of, my rash. I'm going to take more cod liver oil. I'm going to support my body so that it has what it needs. Cod liver oil I found helps with my rashes. It helps reduce the flare. And I also find that taking an adrenal cocktail consistently, and if I double that, even better, it consistently with that can really help my rashes as well. Because my body needs more nutrients and it's trying to excrete them. And if I help give more nourishing parts to my liver, again, if the skin, always thinking of liver, then that can be really helpful for the body too. So if you're watching this and you're hoping that I was like a couple days, that can happen. I've had clients who have results in a couple days, and I think that's amazing. I myself when I kind of get back on track, I notice a change within a few days, but that's not the case for everyone. And you might be different. You might be starting at a different tier on that staircase, and that's really important. So when we're looking and we're thinking, well, so-and-so was able to get results in this amount of time, or we're comparing ourselves to others, they're starting at a different tier on that staircase. Their minerals that they've accumulated over their lifetime or haven't accumulated are going to be different than ours. It doesn't mean that their bodies necessarily run different, because think of a fever where across the board 5% is a fever for an increase, but it just means that we're on a different tier. And so I think a lot of that comes down to giving ourselves grace and being very cognizant of the fact that stress and complacency are going to be our biggest issues. I hope you found that helpful, and please head on over and download this free ebook so you can take a peek and learn a little bit more. Chat soon.